Hey guys, welcome to Modern Data Stack Summit 2023. Myself, Raj Joseph, CEO, founder of TQ Labs, a modern data quality platform for enterprises. I'm pleased to join here today with Mark Mullins, CDO, UCBI. UCBI United Community Banks is one of the fastest growing regional banks focused on high quality customer service with large bank technologies in the Southeast. I have known Mark for 2 years as a customer, and then also have several conversations on this whole modernizing data stack. One of the things I really like about it is he talks it and keeps it real. He is one of a true data leader I have seen, where he fundamentally looks into his entire stack while going through lots of M&As, which recently happened, where he is transforming his entire banking data stack with more careful planning, and then also making huge progress. So Mark, hi, how are you doing? Good?
Good to see you again, Raj.
Oh yeah, thanks. Thanks for joining today. And then can you give a little bit introduction about yourself, Mark, and then also a little bit about UCBA?
Sure. Happy to be here. I've been in the Chief Data Officer role since about 2017 here at United Community Bank. We're headquartered now in Greenville, South Carolina. My background has been in banking over 25 years. I've been working primarily in risk management or data related roles, and actually came to this bank. It's a fast growing small regional bank, as Raj said, growing through acquisitions, and really we wanted to essentially develop a chief data office from the ground up. And so that was the opportunity to come to a smaller bank, was really to start fresh and try to build that team. And so that's what we're doing. And hopefully today I can give you a little bit more information about how we're doing that, and some of the things that have gone into kind of the design and the progress that we're making.
Cool. That's fabulous, Mark. And the topic today is modernizing data stack. I mean, for me as a vendor, go through lots of hypes and buzzwords, and that's part of one of my responsibilities. But at the end of the day, when it comes to actually talking with customers, really what resonates well is the value and more the business outcomes. So the first question, which I would like to understand a little bit, is I know UCBA is on this mission of modernizing this entire banking stack. And I would like to know how your plan addresses that. And then two, also in a world of like, we are talking metadata, semantic layering, data contracts, data qualities, MDM still, and lots of different things. How do you keep up with all those things?
Well, Raj, that's a lot. There's a lot going on in the world of data, that's for sure. It's interesting, as I said at the outset, I came to the bank in order to be able to build it from scratch. So the reality is, in a bank like ours that's growing really fast, both people, it's growing fast with people, it's growing fast with data, it's growing through acquisition. So new data is coming in to the bank at least twice a year. We've done over 10 acquisitions since I've been here in the 7 years that I've been here. So I kind of started out with a really high level view of what I wanted the chief data office maybe to look like. We did not start out that way. Really, the team was formed at the outset with a combination of really classic DBAs, and then I had a reporting and risk kind of analytics team. And those two teams we brought together, and I moved from underneath the chief risk officer to be reporting into the CIO. And so early on, I wasn't exactly sure if that was going to be the best fit, because there's a lot of different opinions on where a chief data officer should report. And quite honestly, what I've really come to realize is that if you've got a CIO who really has an appreciation for data, then it has been my experience that it's a little bit easier to be able to select some of the technology that you might need in forming a chief data office and building the processes and the technology around it. So, so in that, in that regard, I report into the CIO. We have a team today that, as I said, started out primarily as a classic DBA team. But honestly, I started with the people first and what I thought the roles needed to be. And so over the last 4 to 5 years, we've added to our team a head of data governance and data quality. So someone who could begin to focus on those 2 items. We've added a head of data delivery. So somebody who's going to be more customer facing, working with our business units, whether it's on a BI project, might be on something that is an ad hoc, analytic request. And then I've also added our first data architecture last year. So really excited about, that role and kind of how they're helping us with some of our newest, developments. So that people piece was the first, kind of focus area. And that obviously is an inward focus on those team members that are going to report into me, that are going to help me kind of evangelize the programs. On the other side, at the same time, and this is really kind of part of the plan, I believe in kind of a bottom-up approach in a lot of cases to how we roll different strategies out or different tools. So we actually implemented Alteryx, self-service data prep, and Tableau data visualization tool that everyone's those products are pretty well ingrained now. So those 2 tools were intended to give some of our more data savvy business users a chance to start working with data in a more modern way than what they were doing. And then also for me to try to be able to build a community around those people and try to bring more people into kind of my kind of realm of influence, help me learn more about what they want to do with data. And so that's kind of how, the genesis of the team was, let me look at my team first, and then let me look for ways that I can begin to learn from folks in our business and functional teams, about how they're going to use data.
Sure. And it's interesting that you went with people first than technology first. Most of the some of the enterprises I know is they buy the cloud warehouse, Snowflake or Databricks, and then dive into people based on those technologies. And then and the other thing that I also saw was a little surprising is then they go into aftermath at some point, your data governance and data quality piece as they tag along with that. In your case, like you started with the head of data governance and quality, and then data delivery and data architecture. Any specific reasons for that? Is it just more people first mentality, or is it more?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. So in banks, highly regulated, probably similar to healthcare, probably government as well. The first thing that when our regulators are ready to talk about data, they start with data governance. Now, that can mean a lot of things, depending on which organization you're in. That could be a very
another big buzzword.
regulatory driven, kind of we're checking boxes and we're trying to ensure that we have a framework and we've got some things in place. Ultimately, I've had some experience in larger banks developing and seeing how those programs have been rolled out. And probably 3 or 4 years ago, our regulators, they started asking about your data governance program and how it's, designed and how are people, involved in it. So we started there because I knew there's interest from a regulatory perspective. And on the other 2, it was really, it's kind of like, what is the organization ready for? So, I'm learning now, and we'll get into this, I think, a little bit later, but if the rest of the organization is not ready to move ahead in terms of how it's going to support the cloud or any kind of cloud initiatives, then I'm probably, doomed to fail from the start. So I have to begin to build some grassroots connections with other technology leaders, kind of see where they are, where's their head at with the cloud and within a bank, who are the other key, the key partners that I'm going to need, to be successful. And in our case, I was not actually the first to kind of raise needing access to the cloud in terms of resources and development. So we have an application development team that started about a year and a half ago, and they've been building out applications in one of the large, cloud environments. And so they started the conversation, and now I'm beginning to pick that up, carry that torch now, from a data and analytics perspective. I won't say that I didn't think about the technology, because the reality is we implemented the BI tools with Tableau and Alteryx, but at the same time, you go on these journeys, people come and go. So we lost a couple key resources. So one of the first investments we made actually was in an automated data lineage tool, and that was kind of selfish because we lost some key people that had all this knowledge in their head about how things had been built over the last 10 or 15 years. And that data quality tool that we invested in gives us some, reasonable ability to search for different types of code. It's more technical, but it allows us to more easily search and find things when we're doing an impact analysis, or if we're looking at potentially migrating something. That's one of the first places, that my team in particular may go. I go sometimes when I get involved in some of the projects in detail. And that tool, we have a plan. It's kind of the ownership within our team is under the head of data governance and data quality, but they have someone in our team that supports the technical piece. And our plan is to roll that out, to our data steward, what we call a data steward, and data custodians. So if they want to do some self-service, searching on how some Cognos reports or some Tableau reports have been sourced, they can do that in that tool. So that was about 3 years ago. And then about a year after that, we layered in a modern data quality tool that we've been working with, knowing again that the US regulatory agencies are really interested in your data quality program. And for someone like us who does a lot of acquisitions, you have new data coming into your bank every 6 months. You're converting thousands of customers, thousands of loan deposits, different types of data is coming into your system. And so instead of a gradual change potentially in data quality, we might come in the Monday after a conversion and all of a sudden things don't look right, or something's changed pretty dramatically. As hard as our conversion teams work to make mapping 100% correct or whatever, you still learn new things. We actually have one coming up in 3 weeks. So we have another opportunity to learn more about data from the bank that we're acquiring down in Alabama. So anyway, I hope that kind of gives you a little bit more of a clue into how my head's working around all the different areas.
I agree with you. I think you hit a punchline of doomed to fail without the team support. I very much agree with it, because as building a product, I have seen like how much critical it is from a team standpoint. We can bring all those technologies and etc. But if we don't have a good team, then it just kind of does not go anywhere of that sort. But one interesting thing, what I saw in your environment with UCBI is you're merging, and then you also have this regulatory compliance just like any other bank. And then you also have some on-premises, and then also you're moving into cloud. So there is lots of challenges that comes along with that, because in one side you're merging. I mean, if I remember right, last year you did couple, and now we already a couple in the year, which is just Q1 calendar. So I would think like that poses lots of challenges for you. Because one side you are trying to move into this all cool and modern and flashy cloud, and while when you're merging, you bring some other systems which you didn't even know existed before. Right. How do you plan around something that is moving all the time?
It takes a lot of patience. It's a lot of hard work. So in addition, before I hired our architect, I was actually contracting with a boutique architecture firm outside the bank, to kind of help me think about what should we look like 3 to 5 years down the road. So we we took a break, with that company, and now we're actually back with them. We've kind of refreshed that for all the things that are happening in the technology world, and that's, from my perspective, that's kind of my guide from a data, modern data and analytics perspective. Um, but the changes, that are happening in the bank are impacting every part of the bank. So, you're partnering with teams who don't have extra resources to both work on conversion acquisitions and work on your other data related projects. So in a lot of ways, you're all kind of in this together. And so there may be a pause over the next 3 or 4 weeks just because everyone's gearing up for this conversion that's going to happen. Some things may slow down. Well, that means I have to be cognizant that that's happening. I've got to work with teams and work with their availability and capacity. And at the same time, I've got to be developing partnerships, whether it's with vendors or other types of support companies, whether it's managed services or other types of firms who can kind of help us continue the momentum, even though they're not, formal employees of UCBI. And so it's important for me. I try to maintain at least 3 or 4 kind of key partnerships in the world of data management that can, potentially help us, when we're working on different projects. We have 2 projects underway right now, and both of those are 2 different partners. That these are the first projects we've done with those partners, and so I intend to kind of evaluate how successful those projects are, and then try to formulate, a close partnership so we can continue to, work with them, on future projects. When I think about the change, though, that you mentioned, the data change, and you mentioned the regulators. The regulators recently published an update to their information technology handbook, and so folks that work in banking, they know these handbooks are really important because it's how how regulators train other regulators, how they think about what's important. And so there is a handbook that talks about architecture, a chief data officer, CDOs, and talks about data governance, and they kind of lay out what they would like to see, what they expect to see, what banks or financial service companies kind of should have in place. And then it all comes down to interpretation, how, depending on the size of the company and the complexity of the company, the level of maturity, of all those things, has to increase as the bank gets larger. And so that's why I know we're going to get more pressure to continue to mature, all of our practices in addition to how we manage the technology. So there is enough guidance there, that we can work, kind of work with that. The last thing I'll mention there is I try to stay connected both to technology, consortiums, to vendors that are hosting, where CDOs are getting together and they're talking about different successes and use cases. But at the same time, I'm also connected in the banking world. So I was at the Federal Reserve buildings in Charlotte a few weeks ago, and we were talking about the concept of data risk. And, data risk is kind of an obscure term. There's not a lot of regulatory guidance really written about the concept of data risk. And so we had, about 20 banks in the room with some of our regulators, talking about kind of their expectations. And I was ironically sitting next to a bank, one of the top 3 largest banks in our country. And so it was very interesting as a $25 billion bank sitting next to one of the largest banks, because all of the banks have some of the same challenges that we have, even it's just on a much larger scale. So try to keep connected through both the technology and the financial services side.
No, I think that's a fabulous point. I mean, keeping connected with the banking sector focus, speaking the same language, and then also having a technology context as you're going through the different waves of technologies, and then also doing a pulse check with external SMEs. gives you that feedback loop of if you're going in the right direction or not. One thing I always wonder, since I'm not the buyer, like is always like how do you keep up with all these things? I mean, every day there is a new technology that comes in. I mean, when you're just catching up with modernization of data or data stack, you are already in the world of chat GPT now, and AI and etc. So I mean, is there any like magic formula or thing that works well for you, Mark, or UCPI, or in your past
Yeah,
experience as well?
you have to keep your door closed. You have to resist the urge to spend all the time on the hype. It's interesting when, asking that question, because I really enjoy kind of learning and reading. So I mean, I would say 20% of my time is probably reading either about a technology we're investing in, a program that we're trying to mature, or something, that's, come out from a vendor. And so I tend to, and I get contacted every day, like I'm sure many people who will watch, kind of watch this and participate. You have to basically begin to categorize. And so I have something that I kind of refer to as our research category. And so if I get something that looks interesting, or I come back from a conference and there's some new words, maybe thrown out, or some new concepts, and I kind of put that on my research board. And then I try to slowly weave that into discussions with my team, and individually maybe ask them, hey, this is something I've heard about, could you take a look at it, see if you can learn some more about that, and then let's get back together and we'll go have lunch and, maybe talk about what somebody, what something somebody's learned. And in some cases, I'm extremely interested myself. And so I'll start that research process and look for different resources. But I think ultimately you've got to have some kind of guideposts. And so two things I'll mention. I had been working on an enterprise data strategy probably about a year and a half ago, really just lightly formulating it. We didn't have a strong drive at the executive or the board level necessarily, but that kind of changed a little bit last year. We got some feedback from our auditors that they'd like to see a more formal strategy. And so I began the process of piecing together a lot of the different thoughts that I was having, sources that I use, whether at conferences or different vendors that I've worked with. And so we published that to our tech steering committee in January of this year. So really proud of kind of getting that out there. And really that document is intended to be high level, guidance for the things that we want to focus on, that we need to focus on. And I describe in there kind of the alignment of our data strategies to our business strategies and goals first. So the bank every year, it refreshes a growth roadmap. Inside that growth roadmap, there's 5 or 6 key strategies. And so I refresh and will, going forward, refresh our data strategy, based on what we see there. And so you might give you an idea. One of them might be, improve overall efficiency. Okay, well, in our world, we may be able to get, working with a team that's doing some kind of business transformation. We may be able to work with them, to build automated processes around some of the data manual processes that exist today. So that data strategy is kind of our guidepost for the larger kind of responsibilities of the chief data office. And then the second guidepost is the analytic architecture that I mentioned, that we were building out, that we refreshed. And so that, there's a lot of things on the reference architecture that we haven't touched yet, and it may be 2 years. And so what we'll do is that's a subcomponent of the enterprise data strategy is architecture. And so each year as we're refreshing, we're kind of looking at what's happening in the bank. We could buy a much larger bank next, and that would change things probably a lot. We may have to speed some things up, but really try to keep our data strategy aligned to the business strategy objectives. And then within that data strategy, a reference architecture for data and analytics kinds of keeps us on the right path. And if something new comes in and we think it might make sense, then we'll get together and we talk about this pretty regularly, probably about every couple weeks. We're having a little bit more of a philosophical discussion about some of the technologies that we're hearing about. And a lot of times we just kind of put it off to the side. Let's put that over on the parking lot. I'll tell a vendor, call me back in 12 months or call me back in 6 months, and maybe we'll be ready to, to learn more. But it's hard because there's a lot of
Yeah.
really shiny things. Chat GPT in particular. I was recently at a conference, a lot of discussion. And I'm personally, I'm kind of excited about it. I think there's a lot of opportunity. And I think it's going to probably change the way a lot of things are done, a lot of work that gets done. But right now, I'd say I'm cautiously optimistic. I would like and expect to see all kinds of products being augmented with, generative AI technology. And likely you're going to see industry vertical stack solutions, being augmented with that capability. And so I think it's really promising. I'm looking forward to seeing how that evolves this year because it's
No,
happening
no,
really fast.
no. I think that's good. I mean, you are at a very high critical position, and then also in a banking environment where cautiously optimistic is the right way to approach it. And then I can also like how even your data strategy aligns to your business strategy and your bank growth roadmap. That kind of fits well with the whole equation of better business outcomes is something that I also preach. Uh,
Right.
I feel like not all things are as it sounds true. Like, I mean, I know you might have had some pitfalls or some learnings in the last 1 year or two or many. Uh, I know we're also coming to time. Again, we don't have to go. What would you say some things that if you go back and redo um, time travel, if there is anything that you would change, what would you do? Maybe a one item with the few minutes we have.
Yeah, Raj, it's a great question. And I'm sure if you ask me that in 2 years, I'll still have content I could use about redoing because you learn as you go. In some ways, honestly, and this is going to sound really simple, but really, I think just better communication, really 360 communication. So we've done really well communicating with the people who are using data. We haven't done as well of a job really communicating up to the executive level. So that hasn't necessarily hindered us because most of our investments have been reasonable investments. And we've generally tried to align to other business projects that, maybe need a capability where there's something where we tie in really well. So I honestly think, and I'm planning to do that this year. So basically go on the road show, with our enterprise data strategy document in a condensed form and really begin to talk about, why we're doing it, how it can support different business teams and different vertical businesses that we have, to really just build more awareness. And, I meet regularly with a couple key executives above me. And so that's been beneficial because I've been able to kind of plant some seeds with folks, that this is coming and that we need their support, that we want to find ways to, tie, our projects to their success and to try to create value for the bank. So I think ultimately, it's hard to do communication everywhere at all levels, but I think ultimately that's what you're trying to do and what you should strive to do. So that's
Yeah.
probably the area over the next 12 months as I kind of go through this year. And we have some projects that are underway. So I want to try to make sure that we keep folks plugged in, that they know what we're doing, and hopefully they can see the value. And if they don't, I can help explain it to them. So anyway, it's going to be a busy year and an exciting year, that's for sure.
No, I'm sure it is, and I'm sure there's lots of hard work involved too, Mark. This has been personally super enlightening for me because I think you hit lots of key points. One, people first, and then also having a aligned data leadership starting from your CIO makes it some of your jobs easy. And then also another key point you kind of touched on is this doomed to fail without the team support, which kind of also you hit on the last point to building this awareness and keeping that momentum and continuing using roadshows and some tactics around that. I also like this aspect of keeping the banking environment and peers what others in the banking environment is doing, plus also keeping technology focused learning and checking with some external SMEs, and then reading some technology post and marking for research category, and then going through a process of evaluation, and then bringing it all to home in terms of enterprise data strategy as part of a modernization. Sounds like a lot of things that needs to happen was just magically going into only 1 minute. So thanks for keeping it real, Mark. This is what I
Yeah.
like about it, and thanks for educating us, and plus also educating me personally. And any words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Well, the one thing that scares me is when I read a post about Chat GPT being used by a CEO. And if the CEO were to say, if I had a chief data officer, what would this strategy be that they would lay out for the bank? And then they wouldn't need a chief data officer. So as long as that doesn't happen, I'm good to go. I'll be here. We'll be working hard, and I will be trying to make it possible for the bank to grow responsibly. So anyway, I
Yeah.
appreciate the opportunity, Raj.
No, thank you. Thanks for finishing up with that light note. Thanks, Mark. It was a pleasure having you. Bye-bye.
Sounds good. Thanks. Bye-bye.